Hello, and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast, where we walk the cinema so we can talk the cinema. Today, we have part two of our Oscar highlights series, where we watched Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yes. If you missed out the first episode, we're going alphabetically, and you should like and subscribe for more because we're going to cover all of the Best Picture nominees. So go check the first episode if you haven't, and subscribe for the further episodes that are going to come out twice a week.
Right. So we watched Judas and the Black Messiah, which is about Fred Hampton. It's a real life story about Fred Hampton, who was the Black Panther Party leader of Chicago, and basically his betrayal by Bill O'Neill, who was his security guard, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, so basically, Daniel Kaluuya plays the Black Messiah, like the title says, and Lakeith plays Bill O'Neill, who's the Judas that infiltrates the Panthers and kind of backstabs them by leaking information to the FBI.
Right. So, what were your initial thoughts, I guess, on the movie?
Right off the start, I think this is the Daniel Kaluuya and the Keith Stanfield show.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about they're the titular characters, but they're really good.
Yeah, both of them did an amazing job, you know?
Yeah, they both got nominated for it. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
I think they're challenging roles, and I think they're both career highs for these actors. Which at this point, we already know that they're these generations. One of these generations' best actors.
I'd agree.
They've done a lot of good work so far, and I think this might top all of the previous work. So I'm excited for what's to come for them.
I agree. So we basically start the story off with Lakeith's character, Bill, being arrested because he's impersonating a federal officer and is trying to steal somebody's car, and that's how he meets the FBI agent
Mm-hmm.
that gets him to become the informant.
From that opening scene, it establishes that it's really well shot movie all the way through. It
Yeah.
starts off really strong and it doesn't stop. It's very well shot. I think it might be sloppier in a couple beginning scenes with the sound design mixing. They overlap a little bit and it sounds very in the background,
Mm-hmm.
but it's nothing severe. I think it's the editing during the first act that is probably the lowest point for me.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a little confusing to follow the timeline.
Um, Maybe I personally wasn't confused by the timeline, or like I didn't
I
think.
wasn't too confused, but I feel that the editing at the beginning, there's a lot of hard cuts between rooms, and we didn't know if it was in the same day or the.
Mm,
You just cut a lot between him being with the Panthers, him, Bill O'Neill, being with the Panthers, and then being with the FBI. It cut between the two a lot at the beginning to establish that, he was infiltrating the Panthers.
yeah, that's true, but I don't think it really takes away from
No,
the movie at all. Um,
no, you catch up to it. I feel like it could have been better done, but it was still strong enough that I could ignore it.
mm. I feel like a lot of my opinions overall that I have to say on the movie have more to do with like the history of it and like I guess the lack of context, I guess, that I personally had going into the movie.
Hmm.
Um,
That's not the movie's fault.
no, I know, and it's not
It
something
might
that.
be the school's fault
Yeah,
that they don't teach you this type of
that's what I'm
thing.
saying. That's what I'm saying. I think that it's a fault that, or at least this movie made me realize the fault of some of the historical context that they kind of leave out in at least the American public school education.
Hmm.
um,
if they leave it out in the American public school, you know other countries don't even cover it because
Yeah,
this is a very American
it is.
issue.
And, this isn't about the trial of Chicago 7, but I am going to mention it briefly because it does take place during the same time period.
Hmm.
And I feel like trying to look back on my school years, they briefly touch on some of these subjects, such as the Black Panther Party and
Hmm.
kind of the social revolution of the 1960s, 1970s.
Yeah.
But they really, and oh, the other thing that they briefly touch on is J. Edgar Hoover, the uh, leader,
Creator of the FBI.
yeah, the leader of the FBI. They, and basically all I remember them saying about him, at least in high school, was, oh, he did some, he created the FBI. He might have done some shady stuff, but it is what it is. But I think in watching these movies, and especially watching this movie, it kind of is eye opening to how, I guess, corrupt some of the law enforcement did back then. You
Back
know,
then, now,
yeah. So it's
people in power are always corrupt to some level.
yeah. So it's very interesting to kind of learn about, and then through watching this movie, it gave me the
Yeah,
opportunity to look into some stuff as well to see
yeah.
exactly what happened.
You brought up Trial of Chicago 7 being in the same time period. It also has like a little bit of the condemnation of racial injustice that happened in the time period, which when we look at it, wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
It wasn't that long ago. It was the 60s. My parents were alive.
yeah, mine.
The rest of my family wasn't that long ago. So
Yeah,
this is not ancient history. This is still very relevant.
yeah. My parents weren't alive in the '60s yet, but very close to when they were born.
Hmm.
But it is kind of crazy just how close it is to the people, today. I mean, it even said that Fred Hampton's fiance, Deborah, and their son are still alive and still active in the activist type of environment.
Hmm. So there's a question going around that people, I guess, were a little confused by who's the leading character in this movie. The Academy was as well. I guess we'll
Obviously.
get to that when we get to the nominations. But to me, it felt like it was Bill O'Neill's movie
Yeah,
as the infiltrator.
I agree. Especially with the fact that it also intersperses some bits of his um 1989, I think, interview,
Oh yeah, yeah.
talking
They
about,
do recreations of that
yeah,
interview, but they also then put it at the end,
yeah,
the real one.
yeah. So I think it does feel more like his movie and his regret, maybe, or guilt would be a better word.
There's a lot of guilt. There's also paranoia. He's
Yeah.
very, very scared because at points it plays like a political spy thriller
Mm-hmm.
where he is infiltrated in the Panthers. He doesn't have anything against the Panthers, not that we can tell. He's just being held by the FBI because they have these charges on him and they
Yeah.
can basically force him to do this for them.
Yeah. I feel like at the beginning he was probably a neutral type of
Hmm.
person because when the FBI agent, I think his name is Roy Mitchell, asked him like, "Oh, were you sad when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed? How about Malcolm X?" Like he didn't really have
Yeah,
a
he
solid.
didn't really care about politics. He
Yeah.
just wanted to make his money. These were very young people at the time. The actors
Yeah.
are a little older,
Yeah.
but these are very, very young people that did these things in real life.
Yeah, and I think to further that, I think that maybe something I can fault the movie for a little bit, I guess, in that sense, is that the actors are much older than the people that they are portraying, which I get.
Especially Daniel. Daniel does not look 21.
Yeah, which I get because they needed, like professional, probably established.
No, they did a great job, but
Yeah,
yeah, it
but
doesn't portray as the, I guess, reality of how
yeah,
young these people being murdered were.
yeah, I think that when you're watching the movie, you're not really grasping the full gravity of how young that these people were. Like
Yeah,
at
I
the
think it'd be sadder if we saw younger people dying, because as
yeah.
humans, we always correlate younger people dying with it being worse.
Yeah, it's just like like they had their whole lives ahead of them, And
Hmm.
like Lakeith's character I read was 17 when
Oh wow.
this
Okay.
happened. So he's even younger, he was 17
Yeah.
and Fred Hampton was 21 and at 21 he was leading like this huge political movement
Yeah, he was the chairman of the Chicago branch.
at 21 and I think there's very few if any people that are as established
Hmm.
nowadays that young. I mean,
And at 21, he was making incredibly powerful speeches
exactly. He was
that
making
felt very significant.
he was
Every time he spoke, even Daniel, when he spoke, I don't know how accurate the scripts are, but they're very powerful nonetheless. He says a lot of powerful things. Even Lakeith says a badge is scarier than a gun, and that's very powerful and true.
yeah. Yeah, I think that like it's it's just kind of incredible how much power like that these people had at such young ages, especially to a point where the FBI, the United States government, was afraid of them. They labeled
Mhm.
the Black Panthers as
Terrorists.
terrorists, and it's just such an interesting part of American history that I'm so sad, I guess, that
Hmm.
it's not taught more in schools.
On that note, that there's a really good short subject documentary by Agnes Varda. I think it's just titled Black Panthers, and she goes into a rally and interviews some people. It's a rather good if you guys could check it out. If you're interested in this as much as my wife here is.
I just I just with going through especially this season of movies, I've learned a lot about certain aspects. Like we'll get to Mank and Trial of Chicago 7 to name a
Hmm.
few, but those still go into some historical things that happened in the United States that I think are interesting and would be way more interesting to learn about in school than, some of the stuff that we learn about.
And this is why I said last episode that this year is not weaker than last year for movies or Best Picture nominees.
Yeah, I can see it now. I've seen more. I haven't seen all of them yet, but I've seen, I think, about half of them. And I really haven't watched a bad one, you know?
No,
Or,
not that last year had any particularly bad ones,
no,
but it had a lot of more, I don't say mediocre, but more,
maybe
you
forgettable.
know, forgettable Oscar type
Yeah.
movies like Ford versus Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I liked it, it's not new. It's
Yeah.
not something fresh. It's not American history or any type of history. It's a good story and
Yeah.
it's well done. And it deserved certain nominations, but maybe Best Picture was a little bit of a stretch. I don't know why I'm talking about that one. I feel like I'm attacking it. I
No.
liked the movie. I watched it in theaters and it sounded great.
Uh-huh.
I really liked it,
You
but
don't, you don't need to defend it, especially on our Judas and the Black Messiah episode.
yeah, I'm just saying this year feels more significant than
Yeah.
Best Picture nominations, but people were saying that this year's significantly worse than last year. I don't see it.
Yeah. I think that with this movie coming out, especially in the climate that America is in, I wonder how planned that was,
Hmm.
or
This was planned to come out in August. By the way, it came out recently in theaters and HBO Max at the same time. Currently, it's not on HBO Max anymore. It will be. when it has its regular home release with the Blu-rays,
Hmm.
the DVDs. It'll also be back on HBO Max. But yeah, it was delayed due to COVID too by I guess 7 months,
Yeah.
6 months maybe. Yeah, it was supposed to come out in August. Actually, makes more sense to come out now, in my opinion. It's not really a summer movie.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think it came out at the right time, and the movie completely works for me. It's very well made.
I agree that the acting is incredible. I think that they both deserved their nominations for sure.
The acting is good. The cinematography is good. I don't remember this was nominated for Best Original Song. I don't remember it,
It
honestly.
it plays at the end, like
Yeah, I
during.
know it plays at the end, but I already forgot it.
Well,
I would have to listen to it again, but this goes for most Oscar songs. I don't really pay attention to those.
yeah. I paid attention to it, I think, slightly more because I knew it was nominated going into it, so
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
trying to listen to it.
I think that everything is well made. It carries emotion very well throughout.
Yeah.
Even the shooting, because there's like 4 or 5 shooting scenes. Even those are like done in a way that focuses more on the emotions than the gore or the death.
Yeah, the acts of
There's
violence.
the death of Fred. You don't see it. You see his wife's face in a close up, and you see her emotion towards it because the director isn't trying to focus on gratuity. He's trying
Yeah.
to focus on the emotion that it brings to people. And a lot of the shooting scenes, you don't really see the shooting. You see from their perspective, a third person perspective behind their backs,
Yeah.
what they're looking at, what they're shooting at. Sometimes you see them get shot, but not by who they're getting shot by, because that's not what is important here.
Yeah.
What's important here is what's happening to the people, and who's doing it is not an individual per se. It's more the government doing it to them,
Hmm.
not the specific police officer.
I agree.
Yeah, the movie
I feel like
was good.
I can't
I
say
have sorry, go ahead.
I just feel like I can't say enough about it to like really portray like how I feel accurately about it because
Mm.
it's such a
Everyone definitely should watch this. Like,
yeah, it's such a delicate sort of
mhm.
subject, I guess.
I think my biggest issue is that Bill O'Neill might have been slightly, maybe a little bit more than slightly underwritten, and that's why it might have created some confusion to who was the main character because it had a lot of scenes with Fred Hampton.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes where we don't really see Bill O'Neill's person like at all, you
Yeah,
know.
it might have been a little underwritten, but there were some good scenes with him in it. Keith really portrayed the paranoia well. You could see
Hmm.
it in his eyes sometimes, his expressions without him saying any lines during the rallies and that type of stuff. And then there's also a dream sequence that's very cool
I agree. I like that dream sequence a
where
lot.
he shoots himself and then he wakes up. That was actually I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I also thought it was kind of fun that Jesse Clemens, is that his name?
Lemons, I think.
Yeah, Clemens. His character was said something along the lines of you either
He
deserve
deserves
an
an Oscar.
Academy Award or
Yeah, yeah.
you really believe that stuff. And I was like, what a line to say to a
Yeah, it's a little
potential.
meta.
Yeah.
Jesse Plemons is someone that also had a good year, a
Yeah.
good movie year, but
Yeah, he did
this
great.
movie's not about him.
No. I
He
think
did fine, but the movie's not about him.
no,
He's
no.
he's he's a supporting role
Though
in it.
that conversation I thought that was kind of interesting, that involved his characters when he's talking to his supervisor, I guess,
Hmm.
about the situation that's happening in Chicago. And the supervisor asks about his 8-month-old daughter uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
potentially bringing home a black man when she's
yeah.
older.
He uses that as a negative to try to
Yeah,
scare him into
because he's like,
hating black man even more.
yeah, because it's like, oh, like our whole way of life is going to be destroyed. That's such a good. I think it's a good scene to a kind of portray, um, kind of
The way of thinking.
yeah, the way of thinking back then, and even I mean that thinking still hasn't really gone away, you know.
Not for some.
So I mean, it's it's
It's
sad.
something you're taught. It's
Yeah,
not something you're born with, though.
no, I
So
agree. But so I guess let's talk about what it got nominated for. Or
he got 6 nominations,
Mhm.
same as the father. Got 2 supporting actor nominations for both Lakeith Stanfield and Danielle Kaluuya, which confused a lot of people because if they're both supporting actors, then who's the lead?
Yeah,
But I
valid.
guess that's how the Academy works. They can vote the way they want. They're their
Yeah.
own independent thing. This the Oscars are not, any type of certification for quality. They're just there to highlight certain things.
Mhm.
And then I also got an original screenplay, which I think might be the weakest category got nominated for, but it still deserved it. Got original song for "Fight for You," which is the song that plays at the end. They said it deservedly got cinematography, and obviously Best Picture because we wouldn't be talking about it in the series if it didn't get Best Picture.
Yeah.
Uh, I could see it get costume design. I actually really like the costume design. I think it was better than Trial of the Chicago 7 because they were at the same time period. I think this one portrayed the time period better. And I could even see the makeup and hairstyle because there's a lot of cool hairdos and they really fit not only the time but the movement. The Black
Mhm.
Panthers were very about natural hair and being themselves and not bowing down to what other people think they should be as black people, but it didn't get those. Yeah, I think it deserved everything else, especially the cinematography. I think was my favorite, besides the 2 actors.
Mm. I'm really bad at judging cinematography because I really have
Mm.
no no idea how I would rate its cinematography.
It's definitely not. I think a favorite for that category because
Yeah.
it's not colorful or flashy. I think
Yeah, I feel like that's usually
that's what people associate with cinematography, but it's very well shot.
yeah. I agree.
And I think the color palette also works in its favor a lot.
Mm. Yeah, I think that overall it probably got everything it deserved. I think that maybe the reason why Lakeith didn't get Best Actor and instead got the Best Supporting Actor because I'm pretty sure he was run by the movie or by the
Hmm. He
by the
was by Warner
studio.
Brothers
Yeah,
as the
as
main character. Yeah.
but I think that maybe the main or the Best Actor category may have been really stacked this year. Um,
Hmm, maybe it's we're never gonna know what happened, but we're just gonna take it forward as I think.
yeah.
They both got supporting actors, so there's no lead in
Mm,
the movie. They both deserve the nominations.
yeah. So I guess moving on to the rating.
Yeah, I think we both give it the same.
Yeah.
An 8, straight down
Yeah.
the middle there. I don't. It would never be lower than that. It could have been higher,
Yeah. I agree.
but it wasn't my favorite screenplay of all time. But I think it was mostly carried by the performances.
I
I
agree.
also think the directing was pretty good. I'm not familiar with Shaka King. Well, I wasn't until now, but I will definitely watch his next project.
Mhm. I agree. I think that it's a very solid 8. Um,
Yeah.
there's really and
I could see how a lot of people love this movie. There's a lot to love. There's not a lot to hate.
yeah, I agree, which is like I can't really find major faults in it, which is why I feel like I haven't said much about it.
I could see some people more radical people saying it's not political enough.
Yeah, I could see that.
And maybe Jesse Plemons plays a little bit of a white knight type character where he's not
He's
racist.
yeah, he's not
per
evil.
se.
Yeah, he's not evil per se.
Yeah, they're trying to have the goody two shoes white person in it, but I don't. It doesn't affect it for me too much.
No, I
But I
agree.
could see more political people than we are being, a little short sighted by that.
Yeah,
But yeah, that I think that wraps it up
I think
until the
so.
next episode. So subscribe so you don't miss out the next episode, which is gonna be
Mank.
Mank. She's excited for Mank, I think.
I'm really excited to talk about that one.
Yeah, you get to talk about Citizen Kane too. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so subscribe, like, in whatever platform you are, and tune in next Thursday.
Thanks for listening.